The Grudge, the 2020 version, is directed by Nicholas Pesce or Pesce, produced by Sam Raimi, and stars actually quite a talented cast. You got Andrea Riseborough, Demian Bichir, John Cho, Gilpin, who we just saw for that movie The Hunt, Lynn Shay and Jackie Weaver, and among others. And this is now the fourth American version of the Grudge series that began with the Japanese horror franchise known as the Ju-on series that began in Japan. And this is now the third. This is now the fall of the fourth film in the American franchise that began with 2004's The American Grudge. And this is actually, in a way, it's basically a sidequel that takes place during and after the events of the first film from 2004. And in this story, it deals with, let's just say that it deals with multiple storylines that all involve with this same house that these people go to, and it has to do with people get possessed. It basically becomes like a passing of a possession type thing, where the people the people that go to this house are all connected by this house they go to, and some crazy shit comes up like typical ghost films, and it has to do with these detectives that are also involved in the case and trying to solve it. And basically, it becomes quite, pretty much them having to figure out what's going on and trying to survive from ghosts.
Yeah.
Now, here's a little backstory. Now, I will admit I'm not really too familiar with the Grudge franchise. I've heard of the original Ju-on film before the remake of 2004, the American remake came out. I haven't seen it, but I heard it's really good. The only one I've seen really in its entirety was the first Grudge film in 2004, which I saw in theaters. And I actually got to admit, for a PG-13 horror film, much like I said with The Ring, the 2002 remake it was actually a very, compelling American horror movie that was able to kind of bring in some interesting things. And one of the things that really kept my interest the most was when I saw it, it had that creepy vibe of just being unsettled, especially with the really like menacing, creepy stuff involving with that child and Sarah Michelle Gellar's performance. So I've only seen the film a handful of times, but I still to this day I remember enjoying it. But I've never seen the sequels.
I've what I've seen, like I've never seen the Japanese version at all. I did see the Sarah Michelle Gellar's version, but I will admit I haven't seen it since it was new, and that's what was kind of hard getting through this movie because I couldn't quite remember a lot. I remember that film to be okay. Like Justin said, wasn't really a big fan of this franchise for one. I thought Rings was far better, far superior than The Grudge, but it just, I don't know, I'm just not really big in these type of movies. And then the movie, I didn't even know they made a 2 or 3 and a 3 till years later. In fact, I just now learned, I think today, they had a part 3, and I didn't even know that. I knew they had a 2, but I heard that was so unwatchable that it was like pretty much felt like a straight to video, cheap made and all that. But I've never been a big fan to even want to go back and see any of the movies. So whenever they decided to make this film, what I was already knew, like I still questioned why, because a couple years ago we got The Rings, and that was fucking unwatchable. And then we hear that they're doing a Grudge, and I felt like it was probably going to be in the same like level. And well, my problem is the fact that movies like The Ring and The Grudge, I felt like were good of its time, more like early 2000s, and I don't feel like those movies really. I mean, it just makes you ask why was it made, you know? So I was just went into this not really. The only thing that probably got me interested was I heard that they're finally, which I'll give it praise for, was it was going to take a hard R approach with gore. So finally, they're going to start, we get something like that. Because, these type of films don't even go for blood at all. So I was like, okay, that's the only aspect. But other than that, really wasn't really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I agree. Like this is one of those type of movies that I really just didn't really have much expectations for because, well, first of all, what really was a bad sign was the fact that you had it to where it was going to be dumped in January, which it was, and we are playing catch up with watching the movie and everything, so we missed it. But with that being said, it also really just wasn't a film that I really wanted to seek out when it came out because there was timing and there was a lot of things going on to where I couldn't see it. So upon after finally seeing the film, I can honestly say I haven't seen the sequels, 2 or 3 of the American versions, but this movie was such a just a very empty, hollow, and such a fucking disaster of a film. Like I
Yes,
actually remember
I
enjoying the first liking the first Grudge, but I don't remember the first Grudge being this fucking bad like this one was.
I would agree with you. You know, I didn't care for the first one overall. It's still okay, but after upon seeing this one, I like I predicted, this movie was fucking trash. It was a disaster from beginning to fucking end. This was terrible. Holy shit.
Yeah,
I don't know where to be. I'll just get my pros out of the way, just get them out clear. I did like the whole seven look they were going for with the cinematography was good, was pretty good. The casting did their job. There was nobody that was really bad. It just was more just they did their job and that's about it. And it's sad because this movie's full of fucking A-list actors, but it holds them down pretty good too. So that's another problem. Or that was another thing. The cast was okay. I like the gore again, and Sam Raimi's actually attached to this, so it gets a lot of the gore aspect into it, even though he didn't direct it. And it's pretty bloody. I will say that. But other than that, that's all I like. That was it. Not
yeah.
even what I'm into. When I get in my cons, the stuff I like, I could not get into because of how bad the when I get into the cons, I'll tell you how bad this fucking movie gets.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I thought that the cast was given for what little they had to work with, they did fine. I think the one I think that stood out probably the best for me was well, it was mainly the main girl and Lynn Shay. It seemed like she was having like a lot of fun playing that kind of like creepy type woman and stuff like she is in a lot of typical movies. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's the funny thing about Lin Shay is she becoming stereotyped in these movies, this genre? Because she's in like a bunch of paranormal films.
Yeah, I think ever since since the Insidious films have come out, she's really been typecast to doing a lot of like, well, I mean, being in a lot of these ghost type movies. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so the cast was fine, and I I also got to admit that the movie does have really good atmosphere that I really appreciated when it sets the mood, the kind of gritty angle they're going for, and the novelty of them doing like a police investigation thing could fucking work because on paper you could do something like this and do like a whole Seven approach and make it this dark, like kind of maybe kind of like a True Detective type feel on the cases and stuff. Wow, so I
Exactly.
like the
While you're on that subject, I will say that maybe, just maybe, it would have been a lot smarter if it would have just ignored the sequels and been the true part two. Maybe they should have done that
yeah.
to play it safe.
Um, Well, because the only thing that really that happens is that this is really much of a side story that's separate from the main arc of the first film. Because in fact, you could get the idea that because it's been a long time since I've seen the first Grudge, but it's basically like a different point of view than that's taken place the same time, and then it continues after the events of the first film. But the thing is that even with that being said, I mean, it falls into our cons later, but it becomes very uninteresting when it's doing that. But the whole
Yeah.
novelty of them doing like a police detective thing could work. But and there
Yeah.
actually is some, like you were saying, some good, pretty gore stuff. And I was actually surprised with the amount that they got away with. And there was some like there was potential that they could have went with as far as some disturbing stuff because there actually is moments where you see kids getting killed in this, and that's pretty ballsy. So
Especially detailed.
Yeah, and so there is some good things that they could try to do with could have done with it, but yeah, it pretty much falls short because now we get to pretty much in our cons and holy shit, where do I begin? So this movie, I get what it's trying to do. It's trying to basically follow a different, like a sidequel to the events of the first Grudge film. But what's problem with this is that its storyline becomes just a standard by the numbers fucking ghost movie, and also it becomes so convoluted with so much of its characters that well, we hardly get any fucking idea who they are, and when they are introduced, it's all like the editing is so bad to the point that you can't. It's I had a hard time following where we were in this timeline.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. Starting with my cons, I gotta say one of the worst things is the entire structure, editing, writing. All I'm just gonna mix it all in one big fucking rant. Uh, all of that makes this movie. It is so fucking messy. Like it is going from 2004, six to a different time period, like a kind of like a presentish type. Well, it's still back in the day, but if we were following the detective present, and then it goes back to another timeline because they're telling three. It's like watching a poor man's anthology series that connects, and you follow different families. And like Justin said, they don't go in any detail on any of these fucking family members. They're just thrown in there and they live in this fucking house. That is it. Everything else is just, it is just jumpy. Like we'll be in like one scene where some shit's going to happen, but then we're like like at the beginning it was telling us what time period we were in, 2006 or whatever year, and then they did a 2005 one, and then suddenly the next scene we see the present day with the detectives, the present day of the movie, and she's driving. And then the next scene it goes to a different family and doesn't even let you know. There's no subtle moments in this film, and it's just congruent. I mean, just so tangled and just it's like a fucking blender of a script. I couldn't even fucking follow anything. This movie made me feel like I was a dumbass.
Yeah,
And not only that, I was incredibly fucking bored because of how messy it was. I lost all interest in what I was watching. And then the boring shit played in and just the typical jump scares, the typical raw, the music playing up, the shit I've seen before. If you've been watching this channel, what happens anytime I see those movies? You hear us rant, me rant especially. And again, we are still not getting these movies right. And again, it's another piece of shit. I mean, I don't know which one's like worse than editing, this or Fantasy Island. I really don't know, to be honest with you. These are those two films, this film and that film, was some of the worst editing I've fucking seen in a long ass time.
yeah. Yeah, it's one of those movies, man, that it thinks it tries to be clever with so much going on that on in it. This is a weird comparison. If anything, it's less like Seven and more like you're trying to rip off some of the Saw sequels with how they try to do the multiple storylines. They're all like intertwined and shit.
Yeah, intertwined. But the thing is, with Saul, in order for that to work, it the they made multiple films, and honestly, Seven and Saul are fucking like Save It Private Ryan level compared to this fucking movie. It's an insult to put this movie with those names. But I get what you're saying on that. It's just it should like what they try to do. You need to get a talented writer, but honestly, I don't even see. This could have been maybe they should have maybe done this on a series, TV series. This should have
Yeah,
been more of a
it really
series
felt
because
like it was
really
more structured like a mini series or something because in a way it was almost like I was watching and I haven't seen all of it, but it was almost like I was watching like short episodes or like a half episode like I was watching that series The Outsider that aired on HBO that's based on the Stephen King book. It was almost like I was watching that the way it was structured. And I was like, this really feels like it's like a short mini series or something.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And another thing that hurts it when you do try to do this crazy plot of different storylines and they all intertwine and become one at the end, like predictability, another issue. You can't do that in an hour and 30 minutes. It's
No.
impossible. That can't do it unless you're doing an anthology movie. But still, I didn't care for anybody in this. I didn't care for nothing. For a movie that had a bunch of A-listers, some good actors in this fucking movie, and I didn't give a damn. I didn't fucking care. I played on my phone. I watched the weather while this movie was
I was
playing.
the same way. Had the film, that's what I'm saying. Like none of these characters click to me, and when they and most of the scenes that we see is just them just doing exposition dialogue about how they're solving how they're investigating and stuff, or they're getting like into just stuff that we either already know or stuff that's really not like interesting because they don't really either go into detail with it, and it's just heavy exposition that just is there, and it's fucking boring.
Yeah, dialogue is just it's structured so typical Hollywood. It's like they're reading just straight from just reading a script on a lot of times. And I've noticed that a lot in some of the scenes with some of our big A-listers. I'm like, man, this was bad. I mean, I'll give it props for trying to at least get out of the PG-13 and say, hey, let's try to go more back to hard R. I'll give them that. But whenever you do that, but then you got to have a story still. I don't want to just see a bloodbath. I want to see something else. You got to have a structure. And there was no structure.
Yeah, and it didn't really feel like, and also typical to minor spoiler, they defeat the fucking villain so easily to the point that, and not to mention, like, even when they do all the whole possession stuff, it becomes such a rinse and repeat of stuff that we've seen in countless other fucking scenes. Not to mention, as far as I remember, at least in your
creepy to people, yeah.
And so there was nothing really that clicked for me in this. In fact, almost after the beginning of the film, they literally strive away from it being the whole grudge type creature that's after them. Because in the original film, if I remember, and I'm pretty sure the sequels did, they mainly focused on like the main Japanese girl or boy that was trying to go after them. And in this, it just seems like they're possessing them, which it's a neat concept, but that's all they're doing. They're just jumping from host to host, and it becomes fucking repetitive.
Yeah. Other than that, man, there's nothing else I really got to say. This was probably the wrongest way you can go about fucking doing these type of movies, and fucking don't spend your hard-earned money on this. This was fucking horrible from beginning to end. I mean, shit. I don't know. I was so lost in this movie. I almost felt like I couldn't review it because I didn't know if I was watching it. I don't think I've ever seen a movie in a while that I literally watched, and I didn't know how I was going to go about it because it was that messy that I felt like it was going to come off as I didn't watch the movie and I was reviewing a film I never saw. And that was what my worries was. God, this is that bad of editing. So I don't know what else to say. What's your grade?
Well, with that being said, with any of the small pros that I have, because this movie was just more was such an empty film with really nothing going for it, and it didn't really piss me off too much, I'm just going to give this movie a disaster grade on the Film Phreeks meter.
I'm going very, 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 very low on the disaster grade rating on the Film Phreeks meter.
Fair enough. For those of you who have also seen the Grudge 2020 and also the other Grudge films and also the Japanese versions, the Ju-on franchise, let us know in the comments below what you thought about it. And if you like what you see here, you can feel free to like, subscribe to our channel, and we'll be seeing you in our next review. We'll see you later.